Good afternoon, everyone. It's Emma Mackay here from City and Guilds. I'm the industry manager at City and Guilds for all that is hair, beauty and retail. Before I start the webinar this afternoon, if somebody could kindly raise their hand into the attendee section, just so that I can make sure that everybody can hear me. Thank you, Barbara and Carl. Thank you very much, everyone. Wonderful. So as I say, welcome this afternoon to our City and Guilds webinar on the Level 2 Hair Professional Standard Review Consultation. So just to set the scene slightly before we get going, we are very much aware this is very short notice, so thank you ever so much to everyone for attending. The steering group did release the consultation for the hair professional review of the standard at the weekend, slightly earlier than we expected. So what we have done here at City and Guilds is we've worked together, the hair and beauty teams, to carry out our own internal reviews, and we've got lots of information we'd like to share with you, take you through the survey, take you through the proposals, and support you all with posing any challenges, questions, queries, and in support of this review process. So we are on the GoToWebinar platform, so you will all find yourselves in listen only mode. I'm going to be joined this afternoon by Diane Mitchell, one of our City and Guilds lead independent endpoint assessors for the hair professional standard. You will be able to see on the right hand side of your screen there that there is a toolbar with icons. You'll be able to raise your hand, you'll be able to ask questions. What we're going to ask you to do this afternoon is to pose as many questions as possible in the question icon on the right hand side there. What we'll do as Diane launches into the detail of the presentation is that I'll work my way through the questions as much as I can. There's lots of you expected this afternoon. So what I'll try to do is interject with Diane as she's going through the slides, ask lots of questions. There potentially will be a lot of questions that we won't be able to answer ourselves. In fact, we would strongly advise that you do include them when you do your survey response as part of this bigger sort of wider consultation piece. So we are not unfortunately going to be able to unmute anyone this afternoon for time restrictions where you sort of raising your hands and things, but please, as I say, do use that question toolbar to ask as many questions as you'd like to. So what we're going to cover this afternoon, we're going to look at the proposed changes to the Level 2 Hair Professional Standard. We're going to look at hairdressing first of all. We're going to explore the knowledge test, the observation and questioning, and the sort of professional discussion. We're then going to look at grading, followed by barbering also, and try to capture as many questions and have that discussion towards the end of the webinar this afternoon. So just a little bit of context really to where this has come about from. So this webinar this afternoon is about the Hair Professional Apprenticeship Standard Review. So following the Institute's route review, and it was around the mid-2019 period, the review of the hair professional standard was temporarily placed on hold due to the coronavirus pandemic in 2020. The Hair Professional Apprenticeship Steering Group, expert working groups and the endpoint assessment organisations have all been working together over the last year or so to review the current apprenticeship standards, and these are now ready for wider consultation. If you think you have an apprentice on the current Level 2 hair professional apprenticeships, or if you're thinking about having them in the future, this really is your opportunity to be able to have a chance to have your say and try and shape and change and influence how this apprenticeship standard will change and develop in the future. So along with us, prepare to have your say on the content of this Level 2 hair professional and barbering professional standards in England. So I'd like to welcome Diane to join me. As I said at the beginning, Diane Mitchell is one of our City and Guilds lead independent endpoint assessors for the hair professional standard. Hi, Diane.
Hi, Emma. Thank you very much. So first of all, I just want to confirm that as part of this consultation period, they are proposing that the hairdressing and the barbering standard will be split. So that is the biggest change. And one thing I just want to bring your attention to, the reason we are doing this afternoon is because it is a very short timescale for this consultation. The consultation finishes next Thursday. So we just felt it really important for us to go through the proposed changes with you, so then you are best placed to be able to complete that consultation survey. But as I say, it closes next Thursday, so we only have a week to do this now because it actually went live just before the weekend. So hairdressing and barbering is going to be split into 2 separate standards, and for each one of them they will be introducing 3 separate assessment components. So the target date for this approval is going to be June 2022, so not that long away. So we must make sure that we all have our say and feedback our views on what the proposals are. So the first proposal is that we're going to have an assessment method 1, which is going to be a computer-based multiple choice written test online. Assessment 2 is going to be your observation with questioning, and assessment 3 is going to be professional discussion. So then we're going to move on to the hairdressing. One thing that I want to make you aware of, that we are still going to have a mandatory qualification as part of this standard. There was talks at one point, did we need the mandatory qualification? But I think employers and the steering group have come back very strongly that they felt there was a need still to have the mandatory qualification. One of the things that has changed, and it's something that is a rule from IfATE, is that if we are having a qualification, everything has to be assessed as part of the endpoint assessment, and we cannot have optional units any longer. So I think that the steering group felt very strongly that we still needed to retain those skills around perming and relaxing, and those 2 units have been merged together, and I'll talk you through that in a little while. So we're going to go on to the first assessment method now. So assessment method 1 is going to be a computer-based multiple choice written test. One thing that is really good for this standard, they're not stating that any of these assessment methods have to be done first, so you can do them in any order. All right, so as part of the creative hair professional, it is stated that the knowledge test has to be passed first. For this standard, that is not the case. So the proposed assessment specification is that the apprentice will have around about 60 minutes to complete this test, and the duties that are going to be covered is going to be the knowledge side of it, the scientific side of it. So you'll be tested around duty 2, which is your health and safety, infection control, your legal, industry and organisation requirements, and manufacturer's instructions. Duty 3 is going to be advise and consult and recommend a range of services and products. Duty 4 is going to be your shampooing and conditioning unit. Duty 7 I've highlighted in red because this is a change. All right, so as I said, they are merging the perming and the chemical relaxing unit together. So we've got a new unit which is perform a range of chemical services to change the degree of curl or straightness of the hair. And then duty 8 is going to be your colouring unit. This assessment method is going to be graded as a pass or a fail. So as I say, but there is no particular order in which this has to be done. It's not as if this has to be passed before they go on to do the observation and questioning.
Diane, I've got a question about the computer-based multiple choice test. Is that a good time to come in and ask the first question?
Yeah, of course you can.
Okay, so this is a question from Judith. The computer-based multiple choice written test, the online test, must be taken in the presence of an invigilator who is the responsibility of the EPAO. Will this mean that the centre cannot invigilate the online test?
No, you will still be able to invigilate it, but it won't be, the assessor won't be able to do it. So it'll take on JCQ terms, a bit like how you do functional skills.
Yes, wonderful, thank you. A few more questions coming in, Di, about the test. How many attempts can an apprentice have to take the test, do we know?
I don't think that is stipulated yet within the assessment guidance. It's not written anywhere at the moment, but again, that's a really good question. It might be a good question to pose as part of your consultation when they're talking about the knowledge test.
Thank you. Yes, so please, Blanche, do pop that one onto your consultation survey. We have another question. Is there a pass rate, do we know, as such yet? I think sometimes in tests there's things like 70% correct gives a pass automatically.
There will be definitely a pass criteria, but as I say, the nuts and bolts of that yet hasn't been agreed. If we think about the creative hair professional, there is a pass mark for that, and obviously they have to get so many of the health and safety questions right. So, but that fine detail hasn't yet been approved as we speak at the moment. I think the purpose of this consultation is the first step, and there'll be other consultations afterwards.
Thanks, Diane. Somebody's asked, are there any cutting questions in the knowledge test?
No, there won't. Cutting will not be tested as part of the knowledge test, because that will be tested as part of the observation, which we're going to go on to in a moment.
Thank you. Lucy's asked, what are duties 5 and 6, please, Diane? I think you referred to them as you were explaining the knowledge test.
Okay, I'm going to go through those in a moment. All right.
Yeah, that's great. And Tamsin has asked, will there still be unit exams as well as the in-knowledge test? I think Tamsin's referring to the on-programme mandatory qualification.
Yes, so as part of the on-programme, we will still have unit-based assessment and unit-based knowledge tests for them to help prepare them to do the endpoint assessment knowledge test.
Wonderful. Thanks, Diane. That's all the questions so far, linking directly to the online test.
Okay. So we're going to go on to the observation and questioning now. Okay, so what they're now stating is that we can only have a maximum of 5 apprentices at one time. All right, so currently we have 8, and that is being reduced to 5. An observation with questions will be asked by the independent assessor under the apprentice's normal working conditions, and this will allow the apprentice to demonstrate the key skills, the knowledge, skills and behaviours shown in the mapping through naturally occurring evidence. The independent assessor will ask questions as explained below. First of all, stimulation is not permitted at all during the observation. Currently at the moment, as part of a adaptation and dispensations, we're allowed to use a head block, but obviously for this, we will not be able to have any stimulation at all. The good news is that when this went out to consultation last time, they were talking about that we had to cover all different hair classifications. What they're now stipulating is that the practical assessment can be completed on any type hair, which is from classification 1 through to 4. So we're going to now go on to looking at the first part of the observation.
Brian, can I just ask you a question about your initial conversation there? So Judith has asked, we have 5 learners in the 1 EPA session for, oh sorry, it's about the professional discussion. I'm going to save this question, Diane, for when we come on to the other assessment element.
Okay, thank you, Emma. Okay, so we're going to look at the first observation 1, which is your colouring and lightening. I can't remember what skill this is, sorry, I haven't put that on, but it's either 3 or 4, one of the other skills that obviously isn't going to, sorry, it's concluded in the knowledge test, excuse me, sorry. Observation 1 is your colour lightening hair using a range of techniques. So what are they proposing? And there's a slight change here, but I think it's important that I reiterate what the change is going to be. They still have to do a woven set of highlights on a minimum of a T-section of the head, but they are now stipulating this has to be a lightening product. So if you think about what we class as a lightening product is a product that removes melanin and pheomelanin and doesn't deposit tone. So this is a bleach in old terms, all right? We're talking about a bleach. One of the things that they've added is that we've always had to do another colouring technique, but they've now stipulated this other colouring technique has to have a change in depth and tone of the hair. and they have to be able to provide aftercare advice. So this application, they've put a rough estimate down, and we're talking around about 2 hours, which is including your mixing, your application, and your development time. So just making sure you understand we're talking about a lightning product, and we're talking about another colouring technique which changes depth and tone.
We have got a toning linked question here, Diane, that's just come up. Can a toner still be used as a colour?
You can still use a toner, because obviously if you're using a lightener, you're going to have to use a toner. But what happens at the moment is usually we do a set of lightning, doing a set of T-section, we use a lightener, and then we use the other colouring technique as a toner. But we cannot do that any longer, because it states that that other colouring technique has to change depth and tone, and a toner only changes tone. So that's quite a big change, and that's something that if you've got concerns about, please make sure that you do talk about that in your consultation, all right, as part of your survey going back to the steering group. So that is quite a big change which could affect your apprentices.
Thanks, Diane. Another question here, can the T section still be highlights and lowlights?
Yes, it can be, yeah, as long as they are using a lightning product.
Okay. Another question, is that 2 colours in 2 hours then, Diane?
Potentially, yes. It could be. I mean, they're saying it could be done on 1 header pair. They're not saying it has to be done on 2. So it could be done on 1 head of hair. But the change is that that second colouring technique has to change depth and tone.
Okay, so that leads into another question. Can you use the other colour technique as an overall colour in between the highlights?
Yes, you can, as long as it is a colour that a product that is going to change the depth and tone.
Okay, there's quite a few questions coming through now, Di, about the colour. Does this include the 2 hours? So does the 2 hours include the blow dry as well, or is that separate?
Okay, can we come on to that in a moment? Is that all right? What I'll do, Emma, if I just move on, because some of those questions might then be answered as part of the next bit.
Following type questions coming through. Okay.
Okay, so for observation 2, they have introduced a second cut, all right, and this is now going to include your style and finish hair. So if you had a T-section coming in that was on medium or longer length of hair, those 2 observations could be merged together, all right, so that's where we're coming from. So you could have your T-section, which then becomes your cut, and your style and finish hair, which would be on medium or longer length hair. So that observation 2 brings in your round brush blow dry, which creates volume, movement or curl. That cut still has to do a minimum of 3 cutting techniques and a range of styling techniques and equipment. So that is slightly new, all right? We've got an additional cut as well as the restyle. That they've given a rough time of around about 1 hour and 15 minutes. But as I say, those 2 observations could be merged together on 1 client. We're then going to move on to the third observation, which is your restyle. Now they've added a lot more detail around what the restyle needs to be. They're stating it has to be done on short hair. They're reconfirming that a restyle has to change the shape and style of the hair. And they've also added now that it needs to be above the nape and to include internal graduation. Again, they have to use a minimum of 3 cutting techniques, and obviously these obviously have to include your shampooing and conditioning. So this is going to be, again, the time they've added for this is 1 hour and 15 minutes. Just before I go on to answer any other questions, can I just reiterate that the setting aspect and the hair up aspect has now been removed from the observation and will form part of the professional discussion. The assessment will be the observation we're questioning will be graded foul, pass or distinction. Currently, we ask oral questions afterwards, but what's happening here is they will be asked questions either during or after the observation. I think probably City and Guilds would take the approach that we don't really want to talk to the apprentice too much during, because that could put them off. So after each of the observations, we will be asking a couple of questions to reconfirm any areas that haven't been seen. Now, what I mean by that is one of the knowledge and skills areas around colouring is what would you do if a problem occurred and how would you rectify it? Now, unless we see that, that will then have to become one of our questions. So the independent assessors will say, okay, if you think about that colour you did, if you did have a problem, how would you rectify that? All right, so it's making sure that we do make sure we answer those questions that are linked to those observations. The total time for the observation, because they have removed setting and they have removed the hair up aspect, is going to be 4 hours and 30 minutes. However, they have introduced a second cut. So before I move on, Emma, do you want to forward any questions, pose any questions to me?
Thanks, Diane. Yes, so let me see where I got to. We talked, I think we got to, could a toner that uses depth and tone not be used? For example, toning down to 8 gold, to an 8 gold, that might make more sense.
Yep, you could do, but then obviously what you need to be aware of is that if you're lightening something, you don't want to lighten it too much, then to take it back down again. But you could lighten something using a bleach and going with something that is slightly darker and then it's got more tone to it. But then again, that's becoming very, very prescriptive.
Okay. So could the T section with a lightener and then being coloured in between? I think somebody asked that similar question, didn't they?
Yes, you can.
Okay. Can't the restyle be from longer length to shorter length?
No, well, it can be. You definitely can be, but it still has to, it's got to be created on short hair. Actually, do you know what? That is a really good question, because it does say on short hair. So yes. I would pose that as part of your, that's a really good question. I would pose that as part of your consultation, because it does say on short hair, where I think possibly they are alluding to it has to be finished on short hair, which then is above the nape.
Okay, Nicola has sort of made it more of a statement, but learners will find it difficult to find models for the restyle if it is on shorter hair, I presume there. So that's a good question or statement to pose, isn't it, on that particular person's survey feedback. I've got another question here. Can the cuts be completed on a male client, as it's already hard to find restyles? This will make it very difficult otherwise.
There's no reason why you can't do a male client. You know, this is hairdressing, and hairdressing isn't, you know, it can be done on a mixture of male or female clients. So yes, you could.
Okay, thank you. Can I please confirm that a restyle must be on short hair and not, oh sorry, long to short? So we've just gone through that one, haven't we, actually?
Yeah, and I really think that's a really good one that you need to confirm as part of the consultation.
Yes, absolutely. With the cutting, is shampooing and consultation within the timescales?
Yes.
Okay, brilliant. Phil has asked, removing, sorry, the hair up has been removed, why? And also then added a technical cut, which will be impossible to the model and be removed 1.5 of the time. Sorry, Diane, I don't know if I've read that very well.
Yeah, no, I think what Phil's saying is, yes, they've removed the hair up and the setting aspect, which it's still in the endpoint assessment, but it'll be covered as part of the professional discussion. Yes. But it's a very good question. Why are they and it could be something you put forward on your consultation, you know, why are we introducing a second cut and maybe not observing your setting and your hair up technique. So, but as you say, and the time, you know, as you say, if you feel that if it is going to be difficult for the apprentices to complete in 4.5 hours, again, that is something that you need to feed back as part of the consultation.
Yes, thanks, Diane. Another question, does the internal grad need to be cut from 89 degrees and below, at the graduation cut?
Right, an internal graduation, it doesn't, I think because it's going to be on short hair and above the nape, I would think that it's looking at a 45-degree angle.
Okay. And then we also have a couple of people saying, you know, the timescales seem a little unrealistic. And I think Tracy's confirmed at the moment the consultation documents read as though the cut has to be on a short hair. Yeah. It's quite confusing. So again, I think we agree, don't we, Diane, that that really does need to be fed back via the consultation survey. Are there any contingencies in place to support learners if models cancel due to unforeseen circumstances?
Currently, there isn't anything written in, but I would think that the endpoint assessment would have to still be covered. So if a client did cancel on the last moment, which we know happens quite frequently, then obviously they would have to source another client, but the range would still have to be covered.
Okay, thanks, Diane. Somebody else has asked if we believe the consultation time is included in the overall observation.
Yes, it will be.
Okay. Does the blow dry on the longer hair have to be on a, so it has to be a curly blow dry?
Yes, this is the aspect that then will create curl volume and movement.
Thanks, Diane. For the observation number 3, the restyle hair, is the finish included in that 1 hour 15 minutes, do we think?
Yes, it will be, because it says changing the shape and style of the hair, and it will, you would still have to finish that service.
Okay. Oh gosh, there's lots of questions coming in. Are there any extensions to time? I'm guessing a couple of people are alluding to the almost the dispensation sort of times and things, you know, the flexible additional cleaning and
there will always, as part of IfATE's policy now, is there will always be a 10%. It won't be 20% any longer. There will always be a 10%, but there'll have to be a reason why the 10% has been awarded.
Thanks, Diane. Just a couple more at the moment. So the observation is stated to have to be taken place in the workplace. Does this now mean that no endpoint assessment observations can be carried out in college salons?
No, as long as it's a realistic working environment, then that is fine. That's not a problem.
Thank you. And finally, for now, can they still pin curl the curly blow dry?
They can do, but that doesn't form part of the endpoint assessment. The setting has been removed and it's now part of the professional discussion. But there's nothing stopping them, but again, it'll be time which would be of an essence here, I think.
Thanks, Diane. That's all up to date, all of the questions for now. Shall we move on to the next part?
Okay, so we're now going on to assessment method 3, which is the professional discussion. So the assessment methods, as I say, may be completed online. Okay, so you could do the professional discussion remotely, or it could be on the day of the practical observation as well, time permitting. So the duties that are going to be covered in the professional discussion is going to be duty 6, which is going to be your style, set and dress, hair and finish. It's going to be duty 7, which is going to be performing a range of chemical services to change the degree of curl or straightness of the hair. We're also going to have, although colouring has been covered as part of the knowledge test and as part of the practical observation with questioning, we will also have aspects which will be covered in the professional discussion as well, because a change to the policy around endpoint assessment, every knowledge and every skill has to be assessed as part of endpoint assessment. Also duty 10, which is maintain up-to-date knowledge and skills of new emerging hairstyle trends and techniques, products, tools and equipment will be included. They're proposing that professional discussion will last 45 minutes, and this is why you will have the option of doing it remotely or on the day of endpoint assessment. If you think that it could be up to 5 apprentices being assessed at one point, if you think the endpoint assessment could be around about 5 hours, if you were allowing the extra 10%, then by the time you've got 45 minutes for 5 apprentices, we're going into a really long day. So that will be down to the endpoint assessment organisation and the training provider into deciding, are they going to do so many, the professional discussion on the day or remotely. The professional discussion is always going to be graded as fail, pass or distinction. Just moving on to the grading. The way this is going to be great. Sorry, have you got?
Sorry, Diane, when to interrupt there. Did you want me just to catch up with a couple of questions around that last slide?
Yep, okay.
Okay, so I'm just going to flick, sorry, back up through the questions because there was one at the beginning, wasn't there, about the professional discussion. Here we go. So we can have up to five apprentices on one EPA session, which for the professional discussion, this could mean learners are waiting around as they won't be able to start their professional discussions until the learners are all finished their practical. How is that going to work? Do we have any idea?
Well, they would all start I don't think it's so much about the practical, because they would all start probably at the same time. So they would all finish around about the same time. The problem is going to be the person that goes in for the professional discussion first. That's going to take 45 minutes. By the time you get that apprentice in and back out, you're thinking of possibly about an hour. Then that last apprentice could be waiting nearly 4 hours to be able to carry out that professional discussion. And that's where I've said that it would have to be a discussion with the endpoint assessment organisation, the provider, around that we may not be able to do them all on the profession. If you're having 5 apprentices being assessed on one point at one time, we may not be able to do the professional discussions on that day. But as I say, that hasn't been finalised yet. Don't forget, this is just the very first part of the consultation. We've got quite a lot to get through before we actually get it published and get it approved. But these are prime examples of things that you need to feed back as part of the consultation, because as they say, you know, it might not suit an apprentice to have to carry their professional discussion out remotely, because it's then having IT issues, it's that employer releasing that apprentice on yet another occasion to be able to complete the professional discussion. So these are the sort of things that you really need to voice as part of the consultation. And this is one of the reasons we have put on this webinar this afternoon, just to highlight some of the things that we feel that you need to have your voice, you need to have your say.
Thanks, Diane. Somebody's asked around whether the multiple choice test has to be taken after Gateway. Did you want to just confirm, in just in case anybody joined slightly later, that the timescales rather than the order again, Diane, please?
Yeah, the order, you've got 3 methods of assessment, and they can be taken in any order. So once they've gone through Gateway, they can then take any of those assessment methods in any order.
Thanks, Diane. Somebody's asked about a hair extension unit. You mentioned optional units being joined together, but there's no mention of hair extensions as yet.
No, because we can't have optional units any longer, because if it's in the on-programme qualification, it has to be assessed. Hair extensions doesn't look at the moment as if it's going to be included.
Thanks, Diane. Do we have to produce a portfolio of evidence for the professional discussion?
Yes, you probably will. You will need to, because there will, especially around the setting aspect and the hair up aspect, they will have to talk through what they've done and where they've got their inspiration and techniques from, and how they've conducted those setting and hair ups, and especially around the perform range of chemical services to change the degree of curl or straightness of the hair.
Thank you. Yes, and somebody else has asked as well, like, around that evidence of work. There's a couple of questions in one, so I'm just going to read through, Diane. Is there any reason really why we or they are using duties instead of units? Do we know? There are additional sort of units or duties in the standard compared to the current version. So looking at sort of GLH for the qualification, this will really potentially impact on that funding of it. So is there any reason for duties instead of units that we're aware of?
I don't know. Do you know that, Emma, at all? Why they're talking about duties? Because they've never talked about duties before, have they?
No, I mean, potentially what our understanding as sort of assessment experts as part of the steering group is that the Institute have sort of pulled together, I guess, a new process for submitting these standards. So I'm wondering if potentially there's just, you know, it's a generic term that's used across all industries maybe, and it's more of a section that we can fill in our usual unit detail against duties. But I do believe it means the same thing, but it potentially is something that the Institute have come up with. Can you explain, I'm not sure if it's for you, Diane, or if it's for the general consultation, but could we explain the difference from GLH is now using OTJ training days, 88 days listed? How is it calculated for the 20% off the job? I think we're talking about here, aren't we? So how are they, so how are training days compared to off the job days? And sort of how would we evidence those for particularly SFA for funding? Potentially is 1 day equivalent to 6, 7, 8 hours.
I can't really answer that question today. I think that's more of a question that you need as a provider. You would have to look at, and I haven't got that detail of what needs to be on and what needs to be off the job at the moment.
Thank you. Okay. And it seems as though there's an increased use of level 3, or commonly known as level 3 type units in this level 2 standard, in particular including the smoothing and strengthening elements. How is this going to impact, I guess, on the level 3 advanced?
Can I just confirm it's not smoothing and strengthening? They've been adamant that it's not smoothing and strengthening, because otherwise, if it was smoothing and strengthening, this would have an impact when they went on to level 3. What they have done is they've merged the permin and the chemical relaxer unit together. All right.
Thanks, Diane. I think that does answer that question. That's great. Will there be any use of case studies at all towards the professional discussion, potentially using clients that they've already worked on previously?
Yes, possibly, but as I say, we don't have that detail at the moment.
Okay. If a learner fails one assessment method, would they need to do the whole EPA again, or could they just redo the one assessment element that they'd actually failed?
No, because it's 3 completely separate assessment methods. If they fail one aspect, they would only have to retake that assessment method again.
Wonderful. Somebody else has asked in a similar way, what happens if they fail the practical assessment but pass the test and the discussion? They would presumably do the practical assessment again.
Yes, that's correct.
Wonderful. Lisa's has asked, where can I find the consultation survey? I shared it on social media channels and it's gone out to all customers via our alert system. But I do believe, Diane, when we do our thank you for attending the webinar email after the event, potentially tomorrow, if not later on today, we'll also send the link again. Is that right, Diane?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Somebody has asked if we know if the funding will increase to cover the increase of endpoint assessment component.
We hope so. We hope so. But until that gets submitted, we don't know. That's $1 million question.
We hope so. We very much hope so. Okay. Will they now need to show evidence of work for hair up and setting?
Yes, they will have to show evidence of it, which will be then discussed which will then form part of the professional discussion.
Thank you.
It will also be part of the on-programme qualification. So maybe as they're doing the on-programme qualification, you maybe just take some photos and do a bit of a case study around what they've done, which then could be take forward as part of the professional discussion.
Yes. Somebody else has asked if there's any further news on funding bands. There's no further news as yet. I think we just said, Diane, didn't we?
Yeah.
This will to rely on the final submission to the Institute in January 2022, and I believe there will be some work from the steering group around, potential applications for funding. Okay, there's some worries around the actual professional discussion element, Diane, within the questions. People are thinking that the learners are going to, the apprentices are going to find that element particularly difficult. In duty 7, will they need to be assessed perming, straightening, relaxing the hair within that observation piece?
Did you know that is a very good question, because one of the concerns that we did raise as assessment organisations is that if you've got a unit, it has to include everything within it. So the way they've written it at the moment, they would have to do both chemical rearrangers and perming.
Thanks, Diane. Can an apprentice still get a distinction if they fail and retake the path? I think you're going to come on to grading in a moment, Diane.
Yeah.
Actually,
yes, I will be. Yeah.
If they have a qualification on programme, which we know they will, that will be a mandatory on programme qualification to complete. Will we have problems ensuring apprentices take the EPA? I think that's more of a general sort of thought there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Are the costs going to be the same? We will continue, we can only speak on behalf of City and Guilds. We will be carrying out a recosting model depending on how many apprentices an IEPA can assess at one time, and also what the funding band will be once this revised standard has been approved by the Institute. If the apprentice goes over on one of the practical observations, will they fail all 3? I guess that's linked to timing, Diane.
They would only fail if they go well over time, then yes, they would fail the observation and questioning.
Thank you. Is the professional discussion going to be recorded, Diane? Do you know?
Yes, it will be.
Okay, I've got a couple more questions. Are we still okay for time? I'm just checking. Yes, we are.
Yep.
In duty 7, can the learners cover just the degree of curl and not cover straightening elements as it states or rather than and?
Yeah, it does state or, but our concerns as an assessment organisation is that we don't think you could have an or in a title of a unit or in a title of a duty. So again, it's a very good question, and it's something that maybe you need to pose as part of your the consultation.
Wonderful, thank you. How can the apprentice achieve a chemical straightening if they live potentially in an area where there is a lack of this type of client?
Very good question. As I say, I can't answer that, but as I say, you need to raise that as part of the consultation.
Thank you, Diane. And I think there's one more just for now. Sorry, maybe I should have worded that differently. Karen, it might be my reading of it, sorry. Why would they take their endpoint assessment if they have a full on-programme qualification? So I think Karen's referring to the fact that the EPA being integral and part of that qualification at the moment, actually, in line with other apprenticeship standards, it will sit outside of the diploma.
Yeah, so currently it sits within the on-programme qualification at the moment, which again, IfATE rules have changed that we're not allowed to do that any longer. But a very good question. If you've got the head professional qualification, why would they go on to do the endpoint assessment? As I say, that is another very good question to pose as part of the consultation.
Thanks, Diane. That's all of the questions up to date for now. So shall we go on to grading?
Yes, thank you, Emma. Right, okay, so the way this is going to be overall graded is that each component will be graded separately, and then they will then contribute to what the overall grade is. So the knowledge test has to be passed, all right? If they fail, they get a fail overall, all right? So they have to be a pass. Now, obviously, the observation and questions, an apprentice can get a fail, a pass, or a distinction. Or if they get, and the professional discussion, they could get a pass, a fail, pass, or distinction. So if I just give you one scenario, they pass the knowledge test, they get a distinction for observation and questions, they then achieve a pass for a professional discussion, they will then come out with a merit overall. If they then get a pass for the knowledge test, a distinction for observations, a distinction for the professional discussion, they would then come out with a distinction overall. So I just wanted to make that quite clear that for the grading, they have to be able to come out with a distinction, they have to be able to get a distinction in the observation and questions and in the professional discussion. Okay, I'm going to move on to barbering.
Diane,
unless there's any other questions.
Sorry, Diane. There is one that's come up. Will the apprentice be able to resit to be able to get a higher grade?
No. Within the endpoint assessments, any endpoint assessments, they're not allowed to resit to improve their grade.
That's great. Thanks, Diane. I'll move on to barbering.
Okay, so for barbering, it's exactly the same. We're going to have a multiple choice written test, which will be around about 60 minutes. The duties covered for this, which is going to be the knowledge only, will be around provide a positive customer experience, showcasing yourself and organisation and in the barbering industry. It'll be around your health and safety, and it'll be around determining requirements around advising and discussing, agreeing the service with the client. So again, this is going to be graded as a pass or a fail. And again, these components can be done in any order. So the knowledge test doesn't have to be passed first before they go on to the practical observation. Moving on to the observation and questions. There is not a lot of change, you'll be pleased to know, for the barbering. Emma, if you can just move on to the next slide, thank you. Okay, so again, one change is we only allow, again, 5 apprentices at one time. It's got reduced from 8 down to 5. Again, simulation is not permitted. And again, the practical assessment can be completed on any hair type from classifications 1 through to 4. We're going to now look into the nuts and bolts of what they have to do. For observation 1 and 2, it's exactly the same of what they've been doing. So they have to achieve 2 cut and finishes, 2 barbering looks, including 2 neckline shapes, 2 outline shapes. They need to use all tools and equipment. They need to cut both wet and dry hair. They still need to have to cover a minimum of 9 different techniques. However, eyebrow trim has now been taken out and it's not included as one of the 9 techniques. They still have to style and finish hair using barbering techniques. They're still required to use a minimum of 3 styling and finishing products. They're still having to use 1 drying technique and achieve a minimum of 1 finished look. They need to be able to give aftercare and advice. And for those 2 cuts and finishes, they're looking at around about 1 hour and 30 minutes. They still have to do 2 facial hair shapes. So 2 facial haircuts using the relevant cutting techniques, tools and equipment, including a partial beard, including a moustache, a full beard and a moustache, and basic outlining and detailing. So that aspect hasn't changed, and they're allowing around about 1 hour for that. If we look at observation 4, which is going to be your shaving aspect. Sorry, okay, thanks. Sorry, observation 5, which is going to be your full shaving service. Again, they have to use a pre-shave product and a finishing product. They need to use lathering products and lathering techniques and use all shaving techniques. And they've stated it's going to be around about 45 minutes for this. For barbering, they've increased the time, although it's exactly the same, they've increased the time to 3 hours and 15 minutes. So we're looking at, again, as a foul, pass or distinction. They probably increase the time because we will have to do that little bit of questioning in between as well, just to make sure they're confirming what products and techniques they've done. So for barbering, it's really no major changes at all for barbering.
Just a couple of...
Sorry, yes, Emma, sorry.
Just a couple of questions on that. Somebody sort of just made a statement really around, there's a couple of statements in there and just thoughts in there around the observation grade should potentially be the overall grade awarded. There's some thoughts in there around, you know, the learner well-being, you know, on this, you know, in this current climate, there's a lot of pressure on them for all these different assessment methods. Somebody has asked, will the apprentice be certificated per mode of assessment method? My understanding is one overall certificate for endpoint assessment. Diane, is that yours?
Yes, that would be correct, yeah.
Okay. If the apprentice fails the observation with questions, will the overall grade be failed?
Yes. So if they don't retake, then the overall fail will grade will be a fail. They have to achieve a minimum of a pass in each of the 3 assessment components.
Thanks, Diane. And then someone's just asked if there's any professional discussion for barbering, but we're just going to come on to the few bits. So I should move this on. Thanks, Diane.
Okay, so we're going on to the 3rd assessment method, which is your professional discussion. This one's going to last around about 30 minutes, and the duties that are going to be covered in the professional discussion are duties 9, which is promote self and organisation products and services using a variety of channels. Duty 10, which is maintain up-to-date knowledge and skills of new and emerging hairstyles, trends and techniques, products, tools and equipment. And then duty 11 is a maintaining barbering CPD. So that is what is going to be covered in the professional discussion. Again, the professional discussion is being proposed as being a fail, pass or a distinction. So we move on to the grading, exactly the same grading as for hairdressing. So if they achieve the knowledge test at a pass, then they get a distinction for the observation and questioning, but then they only achieve a pass for the professional discussion, then they will come out with a merit overall. To be able to get a distinction overall, they have to get a pass for the knowledge test, a distinction with questions for the observation and questions, and a distinction professional discussion to come out with an overall grade of a distinction. But as I say, for them to get a pass, they have to be able to achieve a pass for the knowledge test, the observation and professional discussion.
Thank you, Diane. Just a couple of questions before we move on to the end. Why is duty 9 in barbering not a duty for hairdressing?
Very good question. Very good question.
And maybe that's
something that you need to be bringing up as part of the consultation. But my only thing about CPD, don't forget this is a level 2 standard, and I think it's really important that we remember this is a level 2 standard. And CPD is they would have just really finished doing their qualification. So there could be a few queries of what would be covered as part of CPD.
Yes, thank you, Diane. Is there a portfolio of evidence that's needed for the professional discussion for barbering?
We would assume so, but as I say, we can't confirm that at the moment because we haven't been given that detail.
Thanks, Diane. A couple of people have also said, why are they changing it? We like it. It's something that's working well at the moment, I know. And I think the time had passed me by, Diane, hadn't we, when we discussed it, because every apprenticeship standard must be reviewed. Is it usually and typically in 3 years? I think this might have been about 5 with coronavirus and everything like that. So it is something that is a part of the natural process. Is that right, Diane?
Yeah, that's exactly. It has to be reviewed after 3 years, and we're more than 3 years now. I think we're into at least 4 now. So it has to be reviewed. And also, IfATE have changed the requirements about endpoint assessment, and it has to have more than 1 assessment component. And for hairdressing and barbering, we only have one assessment component, because it's the practical observation with oral questions.
Thanks, Diane. Yeah, a couple of more questions, sorry, more than statements actually around that. It does really seem like a big ask, sorry, for a level 2 apprentice. People seem to like what we're doing currently, you know, the current standard. There was something else, I'm just flicking through now. Does duty 9 include some references to social media? So social media sort of CPD potentially, do we think?
Yes, it probably would do. You would have to go in and look at the when you go to complete the consultation, you will have all the skills, all the knowledges, and knowledge in there which you need to look at and digest. Obviously, we wanted to cover this today just to highlight a few of the changes that have occurred. But when you go and do the consultation, it's really important that you read that consultation document through really carefully before you complete the survey.
Thank you, Diane. Someone's also asked if we have any idea around when this will go live for delivery. So I can answer that one in terms of the plan for this is that the steering group are aiming for the January 2020 submission date with the Institute. So following the consultation results being analysed, going back to the steering group, sign off from the panel, it's due to be submitted January 2022. Typically, we hear whether standards are approved within about 6 to 8 weeks. Obviously, this can take slightly longer, can be slightly quicker. There's quite a backlog of standard reviews, as you can imagine, with the pandemic recently. So potentially around next summer, I think. Would you agree, Diane?
Yeah, they're saying about June 2022.
Yeah, at the earliest, I think that would be, because obviously then we've got to take on board any changes, updating all of our materials, training, you know, yourselves, actually feeding this out and rolling this out to our customers, and also our internal endpoint assessors, I guess, Diane, as well. Yeah. Great. Okay, that's all the questions for now. A couple more people have asked where to find the survey. We're going to come on to that, aren't we, in a moment. Actually, somebody's asked what the current pass distinction rate is on the current standard. Is that something you can roughly quote, Diane, off the top of your head, roughly?
For hairdressing, it's round about 70%. The statistics, and you can get access to my LEPA report, which is on the City and Guilds website, but I believe fail rates are around about 9%. Pass rates are around about 70%, which leaves then around about 21%, which is then distinctions. That's just off the top of my head.
Thanks, Diane. That sounds roughly where I think we, if I was to put a guess to it, that's where I think I would be as well. Okay, let's move to the next slide.
Right, so just to finish off, the reason we've done this is we do need people to feedback on this consultation. So please have your say. As I say, the hairdressing professional, barbering professional consultations are now live. We haven't got much time. The survey closes on Thursday, the 21st of October, which is next Thursday. It is vital that you do, although we've covered quite a lot today, you really do need to go through the consultation document and read it carefully before completing the survey. And what will happen is Sarah is going to send you out the thank you email afterwards, which will have my slides, and it will also give you the details of the consultation and how to go about it, and where you access the consultation documents and where you access the survey. So all I can say is please have your opportunity to have your say. If you have got anything you want to comment, then the consultation, the survey is the best place to do it. City and Guilds obviously will be completing the survey ourselves as well, but we do need you to be able to complete it independently as well. And please share it with as many of your employers and colleagues as possible.
Thanks, Diane. And just to second that, really, it really is imperative that people do take time to do this, because obviously, like you said, we're just 1, 2, 3 voices completing the survey. As many people as possible feeding back to help to really shape and develop what this standard is going to look like in the future will really help, won't it?
Yes,
Just a couple of final questions, and of course, if anybody else has got something they would like to ask, please do pop it into the question box there. Somebody's asked if the changes will affect current learners and apprentices who are currently registered, or just new uptake.
No, it'd be new apprentices that will start on the new standards. It will not affect anybody that is currently is registered or on programme at the moment. It will be new apprentices as from when it goes live, which will be probably around about summer 22.
Thanks, Diane. And somebody's asked if City and Guilds have any concerns over this.
A very good question. The reason we're doing this survey today, this webinar today, is that we wanted to highlight the changes to you. Yes, and we probably all have concerns about a few bits in here, but we just, as an endpoint assessment organisation, we just felt we really wanted to go through some of the things that have changed so that you're fully aware of them, so then you can complete that, go through the consultation and complete that survey, seeing the full picture.
That's great. Thank you, Diane. And we really do appreciate everybody attending the webinar this afternoon and also taking the time to ask those questions. It really does help us to generate the discussion. If anybody else has a question they'd like to ask or something they'd like to say, if they could please add that into the question function. I'll just give that a couple of seconds, and I'm just going to scroll through to make sure that we have covered everything there. A couple of people did ask again where to find the survey, Diane, but you're going to include that in the thank you for attending email, aren't you?
Yes, so Sarah will send out the thank you email and she will include where they find the survey and the consultation documents.
Okay, that's great. There's nothing else that's come through. So thank you ever so much to Diane for joining me this afternoon, and also for all of you taking the time at such short notice. A lot of people have also registered for this webinar so that they can receive the recording of the webinar and the slides post the event. We do appreciate that lots of you are incredibly busy out there. And somebody's also written there, Diane, a huge thank you to you and City and Guilds for your support and guidance with understanding this survey and this consultation. So yes, thank you all very much indeed. Thank you all.
Thank you.
See you soon. Many thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.